I am Josephine, 32 years old, and tonight I am hosting the event of the season at my $10 million Denver mansion. 5 years ago, I watched my husband and sister walk down the aisle together, orchestrated by my manipulative mother-in-law, who claimed Amanda was stronger and better than me. Now they are here at my party, smiling until they saw the man beside me, the man whose presence turned their faces pale. Before I dive into my story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe to see what happens when family betrayal meets the sweetest kind of justice served cold. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Denver, Colorado with my parents and younger sister Amanda. We were close, but there was always that underlying competition between us. Amanda was the pretty one, the social butterfly who could charm anyone with her smile. I was quieter, more academic, and preferred books to parties. Despite our differences, I thought we had each other's backs. I was wrong. After graduating high school, I attended Colorado State University, studying business management while working part-time at a local coffee shop called Brewed Awakening to help pay for my education. My parents could only contribute so much, and I was determined to graduate without crushing debt. It was during my junior year on a particularly busy Tuesday morning at the coffee shop when James Taylor first walked in. He ordered a plain black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and instead of rushing out like our typical business customers, he took a seat by the window and opened his laptop. I noticed him right away. It wasn't just that he was handsome with his dark brown hair and striking blue eyes. There was something about his presence, a quiet confidence that drew me in. "Mind if I get a refill?" he asked later, approaching the counter with a warm smile. His voice was deep and smooth. "Of course," I replied, trying to sound casual despite my racing heart. When I brought the coffee to his table, he glanced up from his work. "I am James," he said, extending his hand. "Josephine," I replied, shaking it. "Josephine," he repeated as if testing how my name felt on his tongue. "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime?" His directness caught me off guard, but I found myself saying yes before I could overthink it. That dinner turned into the most beautiful romance of my life. We spent weekends having picnics in Washington Park, stargazing on clear nights from the hood of his car, and having deep conversations about everything from politics to our dreams for the future. James came from money, I soon discovered. His family owned Taylor Investments, one of the most successful financial firms in Colorado. But unlike what I expected from someone with his background, James was down to earth. He drove a modest car, lived in a comfortable but not extravagant apartment, and never made me feel less than him because of our different upbringings. After a year of dating during another stargazing night, James got down on one knee and asked me to be his wife. The ring was stunning, a family heirloom diamond set in platinum. I cried as I said yes, believing I had found my forever person. The excitement of planning our wedding quickly gave way to anxiety when I met James's mother, Diane Taylor. She was elegant, poised, and intimidating in her designer clothes and perfect makeup. The first time James took me to their family estate for dinner, I felt her eyes on me, assessing everything from my department store dress to the way I held my fork. "So, Josephine," she said, her voice dripping with barely disguised disdain, "James tells me you work at a coffee shop." "I do part-time," I replied. "I am also finishing my business degree." "How quaint," she said with a tight smile. "And your family? What do they do?" I explained that my father was a high school teacher and my mother worked as a nurse. With each answer, I could feel her disapproval growing. It was clear she had expected her son to marry someone from their social circle, not a coffee shop girl from a middle-class family. The holiday season arrived shortly after our engagement, and I invited James to join my family's Thanksgiving dinner. I also invited him to bring his parents, hoping that seeing me in my family environment might help Diane warm up to me. James's father couldn't make it due to a business trip, but Diane accepted, much to my surprise. I also invited my sister Amanda, who had recently returned from a study abroad program in France. Amanda had always been the glamorous one in our family, tall blonde with a model's figure and the confidence to match. She arrived fashionably late, making an entrance in a designer dress I could never afford. I watched as Amanda charmed everyone at the table with stories of her European adventures. What I didn't miss was the way Diane's expression changed when she met my sister. There was an immediate approval, a gleam of interest in her eyes that she had never shown toward me. "Amanda, dear," Diane said at one point, "you must come visit us. I would love to introduce you to some of our friends who work in fashion. With your looks and experience abroad, you would fit right in." I felt a twinge of discomfort but pushed it aside. This was normal, I told myself. Amanda had always been the one people gravitated toward. It didn't mean anything. James squeezed my hand under the table, and I reminded myself that he had chosen me, not Amanda. That was what mattered. As wedding preparations progressed, my anxiety grew. Dress fittings, venue selections, menu tastings all became battlegrounds, with Diane offering her unsolicited opinions and thinly veiled criticisms. "Are you sure about that dress, Josephine? It is not the most slimming option," she would say. Or, "Perhaps a more traditional venue would be appropriate. This modern gallery seems so impersonal." James tried to mediate, but he was caught between his mother and his fiancée. I could see the strain it put on him, and I tried my best to compromise where I could without completely giving up the wedding I had dreamed of. What worried me more than Diane's criticisms was how frequently Amanda began showing up at our planning sessions. Always at Diane's invitation, never mine. They would exchange glances when they thought I wasn't looking, whisper comments I couldn't quite hear. Several times I walked in on them, abruptly ending conversations when I appeared. "We were just discussing the floral arrangements," Amanda would say with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. The alternative was too painful to consider. Despite the tensions during planning, our wedding day arrived, and it was beautiful in many ways. The ceremony took place at Denver Botanic Gardens, with white roses and lilies adorning every surface. I wore a simple but elegant A-line dress with delicate lace detailing. When I walked down the aisle and saw James waiting for me, his eyes filled with tears, all my doubts momentarily vanished. But even on my wedding day, Diane found ways to undermine me. As she helped me with my veil in the bridal suite, she sighed and said, "I suppose this is nice, though, nothing like what I had envisioned for James's wedding. Still, we make do with what we have." I bit my tongue, not wanting to start an argument on my wedding day. Later during the reception, I overheard her telling a friend, "The bride's family certainly did their best with their limited resources, bless their hearts." Amanda, serving as my maid of honor, looked stunning in her blush-pink bridesmaid dress. I caught James looking at her more than once during the reception, but I told myself it was nothing. People look at beautiful things. It doesn't mean anything. Our honeymoon in Hawaii was a brief period of happiness. For 2 weeks away from family and pressures, it was just James and me. We snorkeled in crystal-clear waters, hiked to secluded waterfalls, and made love as the ocean breeze drifted through our bungalow. I thought perhaps this was the new beginning we needed, that things would be different once we returned as husband and wife. Upon our return, we moved into a spacious apartment in downtown Denver. It wasn't the mansion James had grown up in, but it was modern and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the mountains. James insisted on paying for everything, saying my student loans were burden enough and that he wanted me to focus on finding the right job rather than worrying about rent. Finding that job proved more difficult than I anticipated. Despite my business degree, the job market was competitive and my experience was limited to coffee shop management. I applied to marketing positions at various companies, including entry-level roles at Taylor Investments, but faced rejection after rejection. Meanwhile, James's career was taking off. His father had promoted him to junior partner, putting him on track to eventually take over the family business. He worked long hours, often coming home after I was already asleep. When he was home, he was distracted, constantly checking emails or taking calls. "This is temporary," he would assure me when I expressed my loneliness. "Once I establish myself more firmly, I will have more control over my schedule." I tried to be understanding. I kept our apartment immaculate, prepared gourmet meals when he did make it home for dinner, and never complained about the expensive suits and watches he needed to look the part at work. Diane began hosting regular dinner parties for James's colleagues and their wives, and I was expected to attend. These events were exercises in humiliation. The other wives were all from wealthy backgrounds with impeccable manners and social connections. I felt like an imposter in my carefully selected outfits that never quite measured up to their designer wardrobes. Diane never missed an opportunity to subtly undermine me. "Josephine, dear," she would say loudly enough for others to hear, "the salmon is served with the fish fork, the smaller one." Or, "Perhaps next time we should review the wine selections before you offer your opinions. Chardonnay with beef is quite unusual." I enrolled in cooking classes, trying to master the sophisticated dishes Diane served effortlessly. I spent hours watching videos on etiquette and proper table settings. I even changed my wardrobe, stretching my limited personal budget to afford clothes that might earn Diane's approval. Nothing worked. Worse, Amanda began appearing at these family gatherings with increasing frequency. Diane had taken my sister under her wing, introducing her to her socialite friends and including her in charity committees. Amanda fit effortlessly into this world that remained foreign to me. I noticed the way James lit up when Amanda entered a room, how their conversations flowed without the awkward pauses that had begun to characterize our own interactions. Once I caught them in what appeared to be an intimate moment, their heads bent close together in conversation, James's hand briefly touching Amanda's arm before they quickly moved apart when they realized I was watching. "We were just discussing the charity auction," James explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "Amanda has some great ideas for increasing donations." Our first major fight came when I found text messages between James and Amanda. Nothing explicitly romantic, but the frequency and familiar tone made my stomach twist. Late-night messages about their days, inside jokes I wasn't part of, heart emojis closing their exchanges. When I confronted James, he dismissed my concerns entirely. "She is your sister, for God's sake, and my sister-in-law. We are family. Are you saying I can't have a relationship with her?" "That is not what I am saying," I tried to explain. "But these messages seem very personal, and I feel uncomfortable with how close you two have become." James's face hardened. "You are being paranoid. This is exactly what my mother worried about, your insecurity taking over our marriage." That stopped me cold. "You have been discussing our marriage with your mother. Who else can I talk to when you are being unreasonable?" he snapped. The fight ended with me apologizing, feeling crazy for my suspicions. The next day, Diane called to suggest I see a therapist for my obvious paranoia and trust issues. "Marriage to someone like James comes with certain pressures," she said with false sympathy. "Perhaps you are simply not equipped to handle them without professional help." I felt increasingly isolated. My college friends had moved away or were busy with their own lives and careers. My parents, while loving, didn't understand the world I was trying to navigate as James Taylor's wife. I had no one to confide in, no one to validate my growing suspicions that something was very wrong in my marriage. Amanda, of all people, offered to help. She suggested spending more time with James and me, saying she wanted to support our relationship. I agreed, desperate for any ally, even as a voice in the back of my mind screamed that I was making a terrible mistake. 6 months into our marriage, I came home early from a job interview to find James and Amanda in our living room. They weren't doing anything explicitly inappropriate, just sitting close together on the sofa, but they jumped apart when I entered as if caught doing something wrong. "Josephine!" Amanda exclaimed, her cheeks flushed. "We didn't expect you back so soon." "Clearly," I said, setting down my purse. "What are you two doing?" "Just catching up," James said smoothly. "How was your interview?" I wanted to press further, but doubt crept in. Was I seeing problems where none existed? Was I becoming the jealous, paranoid wife Diane accused me of being? Later that week, I overheard a conversation that confirmed my worst fears. I had gone to the Taylor family home to pick up a casserole dish I had left after Sunday dinner. I was about to announce my presence when I heard Diane's voice from the study. "James, darling, I have held my tongue as long as I could, but I must speak plainly now. You married the wrong sister." My blood ran cold. "Mother," James sighed, sounding more resigned than shocked, as if this was a conversation they'd had before. "Look at the facts," Diane continued. "Josephine has been unable to secure a proper job. She is floundering in social situations that are crucial to your career advancement. Amanda, on the other hand, is naturally suited to our world. She has the grace, the social skills, the ambition that matches yours." There was a long pause before James responded. "I love Josephine." "Do you?" Diane challenged. "Or do you love the idea of her? The coffee shop romance, the ordinary girl you rescued from mediocrity? Be honest with yourself, James. When was the last time you were truly happy with her?" I should have burst into the room, then confronted them both. Instead, I silently retrieved my casserole dish and left my mind spinning with betrayal. That night, I confronted James, telling him what I had overheard. "You were eavesdropping." He deflected, anger rising in his voice. "That is what you are focused on, not the fact that your mother is actively trying to break up our marriage. She is concerned, that is all, and honestly, Josephine, so am I. You have changed. You are constantly suspicious, checking my phone, questioning my whereabouts. Because you are giving me reasons to be suspicious, I shouted finally, letting out the frustration that had been building for months. James just shook his head. I think you should stay with your parents for a few days. Give us both some space to think. I refused to leave our home, but the damage was done. James began staying at his office later and later. When he was home, he barely spoke to me. My mental health deteriorated rapidly. I developed anxiety jumping whenever my phone rang, afraid to check social media where pictures of James and Amanda at various events, always posted by Diane with captions like, "Family night out," tormented me. I tried to recapture the magic of our early relationship. I planned special dinners, bought lingerie, suggested weekend getaways. James participated half-heartedly, at best outright refused at worst. "I am too busy right now," became his standard response to everything. Meanwhile, Amanda was calling and texting me, less making excuses when I suggested sister time. When we did meet, she would ask pointed questions about my marriage. "Is everything okay with you and James? He seems stressed whenever I see him at Diane's events." The breaking point came when I borrowed James's car to run errands while mine was in the shop. As I adjusted the passenger seat, something fell from underneath it. Amanda's signature perfume, a small rollerball she always carried in her purse. It could have been an innocent explanation, but combined with everything else, it was the evidence I could no longer ignore. That same week, during another Taylor family dinner, James openly criticized my appearance in front of everyone. "Couldn't you have dressed up a bit more?" he asked as we were leaving for the evening. "Everyone else makes an effort." I had worn a black dress I thought was perfectly appropriate, but in that moment, I saw myself through his eyes, not elegant enough, not sophisticated enough, not good enough. Diane, overhearing, patted my arm condescendingly. "Fashion sense can be learned, dear, though some women naturally have it like Amanda." Amanda, standing nearby in a designer dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I think Josephine looks lovely," she said, but the damage was done. Later that night, as Diane was saying her goodbyes, she pulled me aside. "I don't think you are strong enough for this family, Josephine. For this life. It takes a special kind of woman to be a Taylor. I am beginning to think you are not that woman." Her words cut deep because they played into my own insecurities. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't strong enough. Maybe I didn't belong in their world. What I didn't realize was that my strength wasn't what was being tested. It was my blindness to their manipulation. Our third wedding anniversary should have been a day of celebration. Instead, it became the day my world fell apart completely. I had taken the day off from my recently acquired administrative assistant position, a job far below my qualifications, but the only one I had been able to secure after months of searching. I planned to surprise James with a special dinner at home. I bought his favorite wine-prepared beef Wellington, following an elaborate recipe I had practiced twice before, and set the table with the fine china we had received as wedding gifts but rarely used. I even bought a new dress, spending more than I should have on a deep blue number that brought out my eyes and hugged my curves in a way I knew James once found irresistible. I did my hair and makeup carefully, trying to recapture the woman he had fallen in love with. I wasn't expecting him home until 7, but at 3 o'clock I heard the front door open. Excited that he might be home early for our anniversary, I rushed to greet him, only to stop dead in my tracks at the sight before me. James wasn't alone. Amanda was with him. And they weren't just talking or laughing. They were kissing deeply passionately, his hands tangled in her blonde hair, her body pressed against his in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. They broke apart when they saw me, but neither looked particularly surprised or even ashamed. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment for the charade to finally end. "Josephine," James said, his voice steady, "we need to talk." "Now you want to talk," I said, my voice shaking with rage and hurt. "After I catch you kissing my sister in our home." Amanda at least had the grace to look down. "We didn't want you to find out this way." "How exactly did you want me to find out? With an invitation to your wedding?" The bitter words tumbled out before I could stop them. James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I am in love with Amanda. I have been for months." The words hit me like physical blows. "And you," I turned to my sister. "My own blood." "It just happened, Joe," she said. using the childhood nickname that now felt like another betrayal. We tried to fight it. We really did. Before I could respond, there was another knock at the door. James went to answer it, and to my horror, Diane walked in. "Oh, good," she said, looking around at the three of us. "I was worried I might be too late." "Too late for what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Too late to help you understand that this is for the best," Diane said, setting her purse down as if she had been invited, as if this was her home to command. "James and Amanda belong together. Surely you can see that now." "You planned this," I said, the full scope of her manipulation finally clear to me. "From the beginning, from the first time you met Amanda." "I merely recognized what was inevitable," Diane replied calmly. "Amanda has the strength this family needs. She understands our world in a way you never could. She is the better choice, the right choice for my son." "And you?" I turned to James, disbelief and hurt making it hard to breathe. "You let your mother dictate who you should love." "This isn't about my mother," James protested, though he wouldn't meet my eyes. "This is about Amanda and me. We want to be together." "I never meant to hurt you," Amanda added, reaching for my hand, which I yanked away. "It just happened." "Things like this don't just happen," I shouted, finally finding my voice, my rage. "You make choices. Both of you made choices over and over to betray me." James's face hardened. "This isn't productive. I have had divorce papers prepared. My lawyer will be in touch." Divorce papers already? The realization that they had been planning this, preparing for it, hit me like a truck. "How long? How long have you been planning to leave me?" Neither answered, but their silence was answer enough. Months. They had been planning this for months while I desperately tried to save my marriage. "You should pack some things," James said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "I will give you time to find a new place, of course, but it would be best if you stayed elsewhere in the meantime. You are throwing me out on our anniversary." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. "Where exactly do you expect me to go?" "Your parents would take you in, I am sure," Diane interjected smoothly. "Family is so important in times of transition." The condescension in her voice was the final straw. I turned to face her fully. "You orchestrated all of this. You saw Amanda and decided she was the daughter-in-law you wanted, and you didn't care who you hurt in the process." "I did what was best for my son," Diane replied, unrepentant. "James deserves a wife who strengthens his position in society, not one who weakens it." I looked at the three of them standing there, unified in their betrayal, and something inside me broke. The last shred of hope that this was all a misunderstanding, that my marriage could be saved, died. I walked to our bedroom in a daze, pulled out a suitcase, and began mechanically packing my clothes. Through the thin walls I could hear them talking in low voices, making plans for my departure, as if I were an inconvenience to be managed, rather than a wife and sister whose heart they had just shattered. Within days, I was completely moved out of the apartment James and I had shared. The divorce proceedings moved with shocking speed James's family connections, ensuring that everything was handled quietly and efficiently. I was left with a settlement that, while generous on paper, barely covered the cost of setting up a new life. The final humiliation came 6 months later, when I received an embossed invitation in the mail. James Taylor and Amanda Parker cordially invited me to celebrate their union, my own sister and ex-husband inviting me to witness their wedding. I tore the invitation to pieces and flushed it down the toilet, then spent the night crying until I had no tears left. The day after receiving that wedding invitation marked my absolute rock bottom. I woke up in my tiny studio apartment in Seattle, where I had fled to escape the gossip and pitying looks in Denver, and couldn't find the strength to get out of bed. The crushing weight of betrayal and failure kept me pinned to my mattress, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had gone so terribly wrong. I had lost everything. My husband, my sister, my sense of belonging in my own family as my parents tried to maintain relationships with both their daughters despite the impossible situation. My confidence, my dreams. Even my career had never gotten off the ground. It took 3 days of lying in that bed, barely eating, barely sleeping, before something inside me shifted. Not healed, not even close, but changed. The pain crystallized into something harder, clearer. I couldn't continue like this. I would not let them destroy me completely. I forced myself to shower, put on clean clothes, and walked to the corner cafe to apply for a job. Any job. I needed money to survive, and more importantly, I needed a purpose to get me out of bed each morning. The manager took pity on me, perhaps recognizing the desperation in my eyes, and hired me on the spot to work the register. It was a step down from my previous administrative role and worlds away from the marketing career I had once dreamed of, but it was something. A lifeline when I was drowning. For 2 months I went through the motions. Wake up, work, come home, sleep, repeat. I spoke only when necessary, smiled only when the job required it. I was a ghost of myself existing rather than living. Then came the day that changed everything. A woman named Jennifer came into the cafe regularly, always ordering the same thing, a large Americano with an extra shot and a blueberry scone. She was always impeccably dressed in sleek business attire, exuding confidence and success. I never paid her much attention until the day she addressed me by name. "Josephine Wright," she asked, glancing at my name tag. "You have been working here for a while now." I nodded, surprised she had noticed me at all. "You don't seem like someone who belongs behind a counter," she said bluntly. My defenses immediately rose. "Excuse me. I don't mean that as an insult," she clarified. "I mean you carry yourself differently. You have an education, don't you?" "Business degree," I admitted reluctantly. "Thought so." She nodded, pleased with herself. "Look, I am an executive at Tech Future. We are a startup that is growing faster than we can hire. I need someone smart who can learn quickly for an administrative position that has potential to grow. Interested?" I stared at her, wondering if this was some kind of cruel joke. "Why would you offer a job to someone you don't know?" Jennifer smiled. "I am a good judge of character, and honestly, I see something in you. Something that doesn't belong in this cafe. Something hungry." She wasn't wrong. Beneath my grief and trauma, something was stirring. A determination not to let my story end with abandonment and betrayal. I took her business card and called the next day. Within a week, I had given notice at the cafe and started at Tech Future as an administrative assistant to Jennifer, who turned out to be the director of marketing. The job was demanding and exactly what I needed. I threw myself into the work, staying late to learn every aspect of the business. Jennifer noticed my dedication and began giving me additional responsibilities, including helping with social media campaigns and market research. 3 months into the job, I enrolled in night classes to learn coding and digital marketing, using a portion of my divorce settlement to pay for the courses. I was exhausted most days, working full-time and studying late into the night, but the exhaustion was preferable to lying awake thinking about James and Amanda. 6 months after starting at Tech Future, I created a marketing campaign for one of our new apps that increased downloads by 300% in the first week. Jennifer called me into her office, and I feared I had overstepped my role. Instead, she offered me a promotion to junior marketing manager. "You have earned this," she said simply. "Keep going at this pace, and you will run this department one day." For the first time since my divorce, I felt a spark of real hope. Not just the determination to survive, but the possibility that I might actually thrive. It was around this time that I met Michael Chen, the founder of several successful tech companies, who occasionally consulted for Tech Future. He was brilliant, driven, and surprisingly kind. During a company event, he approached me after I had presented my marketing strategy. "Your ideas about targeted demographic engagement are fascinating," he said, extending his hand. "Michael Chen." "Josephine Parker," I replied, surprised that someone of his stature had sought me out. "Parker, not Taylor?" he asked, and my face must have shown something because he immediately apologized. "I am sorry, that was presumptuous. I just recalled seeing your wedding photo on Jennifer's desk." "We are divorced," I said simply, not wanting to elaborate. Michael nodded, not pushing for details. "Well, Josephine Parker, I would love to hear more about your marketing approach sometime, perhaps over coffee." It wasn't a romantic overture, just professional interest, but it marked the beginning of a mentorship that would prove invaluable. Over the next several months, Michael and I would meet regularly to discuss business strategies and industry trends. He became a sounding board for my ideas, offering guidance without condescension. During one of our coffee meetings, I shared a concept that had been forming in my mind, an app that provided truly personalized shopping recommendations based on an advanced algorithm that factored in not just previous purchases, but subtle preference patterns. The problem with current recommendation engines, I explained, animated in a way I hadn't been in years, is that they are too literal. If you buy a toaster, they recommend more toasters. My system would understand the underlying preferences, style, aesthetic, price sensitivity, and brand loyalty patterns to make recommendations that feel personally curated. Michael listened intently, asking insightful questions that helped me refine the concept. Finally, he sat back and looked at me with new respect. This isn't just good, Josephine. This is potentially revolutionary for e-commerce. Have you considered developing this yourself? I laughed. I am still learning basic coding. This would require serious development resources. Resources can be found, he said seriously, especially for ideas this promising. With Michael's encouragement, I spent the next several months developing a detailed business plan, creating wireframes, and building a rough prototype of the app. Michael introduced me to potential investors, helping me refine my pitch and teaching me the language of venture capital. To my astonishment, my first pitch meeting resulted in seed funding of $250,000. It wasn't enough to quit my job, but it was enough to hire a small development team to build a beta version of the app. I named it Curated, and for the next year, I lived a double life. Marketing manager by day, startup founder by night and weekend. The work was all-consuming, but in the best possible way. I was building something that was truly mine, something no one could take from me. As focused as I was on my professional rebirth, I couldn't completely shut out news from Denver. Through mutual friends and social media, I couldn't resist checking. I learned that Amanda was pregnant with James's child. The announcement, with its professionally taken photos of the happy couple cradling Amanda's barely visible bump, was like a knife to my heart. But rather than collapsing under the renewed pain, I channeled it into my work. Every time I imagined them playing happy family in the life that was supposed to be mine, I worked harder, stayed later, pushed further. Their betrayal became fuel for my ambition. 3 years after leaving Denver in disgrace, Curated launched to the public. The response exceeded even our most optimistic projections. Within 6 months, we had 1 million active users. Within a year, we had caught the attention of major retailers who wanted to partner with us. TechCrunch featured us in an article titled, "How Curated is Revolutionizing Personalized Shopping," with my photo prominently displayed as the founder and CEO. I had left my position at TechFuture by then, focusing entirely on growing my company, which had expanded from just me to a team of 5, then 20, then over 100 employees. As the company grew, so did my confidence. I was no longer Josephine Parker, the abandoned wife, the betrayed sister. I was Josephine Parker, founder and CEO, featured in Forbes' 30 Under 40 list of entrepreneurs to watch. My relationship with Michael evolved as well. What had begun as mentorship deepened into friendship, and gradually into something more. He was different from James in every way. Where James had been charming but ultimately weak, easily manipulated by his mother, Michael was quietly confident and entirely his own person. Where James had made me feel insecure about my background, Michael celebrated my journey and the unique perspective it gave me. We were in Paris for a business trip exploring potential European expansion for Curated when our relationship took a definitive turn. After a day of meetings, we were walking along the Seine at sunset discussing the day's events when Michael suddenly stopped. "Josephine," he said, turning to face me. "I need to tell you something." My heart raced, old fears surfacing. Was this the moment he would tell me he had found someone else? Someone better? Instead, he took my hands in his. "I am in love with you. I have been for some time now. I have held back because I know you have been hurt, and I wanted to give you all the time and space you needed. But I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship or professional admiration." I stood frozen, overwhelmed by his declaration, and by my own feelings that I had been trying to ignore out of fear. "You don't need to say anything now," he continued. "I just wanted you to know where I stand. Whatever you decide, it won't affect our professional relationship or my belief in you and Curated." His honesty, his respect for my boundaries, his unwillingness to pressure me all stood in stark contrast to the manipulation I had experienced with James. "I love you too," I finally said, surprising myself with the words I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge until that moment. "But I am scared, Michael. I trusted someone before and it nearly destroyed me." "I know," he said gently, "and I can't promise that loving me will be without risk. All I can promise is that I will never intentionally hurt you. that I will always be honest with you even when it's difficult, that I will love you for exactly who you are, not who I or anyone else thinks you should be. The next evening, as we dined at a small restaurant overlooking the Eiffel Tower, Michael got down on one knee and presented a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Josephine Parker, will you marry me?" I hesitated only briefly before saying yes. This wasn't the whirlwind romance I had with James. This was a relationship built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love that had grown steadily over time. We were married 6 months later in a small ceremony on the beach in Maui, with only our closest friends in attendance. No family drama, no society expectations, just two people committing to a life together. By our first anniversary, Curated had expanded internationally with offices in London, Paris, and Tokyo. We had over 500 employees worldwide, and I was being hailed as one of the most innovative entrepreneurs in e-commerce. Michael and I bought a mansion in Denver's most exclusive neighborhood, not far from where the Taylor family lived. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, returning to the city where I had experienced such pain. But Denver was where I had grown up, where my parents still lived, and part of me wanted to reclaim it on my own terms. Through mutual business connections, I learned that Taylor Investments was struggling. The economic downturn had hit them hard, and James, who had taken over after his father's retirement, wasn't the financial wizard his father had been. There were rumors of layoffs and possible bankruptcy if things didn't turn around. Michael suggested we host a charity gala at our new home benefiting education for underprivileged children, a cause we both believed in strongly. "It would be a good way to introduce ourselves to Denver society," he said, "and do some good in the process." I agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to establish ourselves in our new community. We hired the best event planner in Colorado and spared no expense. The guest list included Denver's elite, from business leaders to local celebrities to politicians. I didn't explicitly invite James, Amanda, or Diane, but I knew they would hear about the event. Denver's social circles were tight, and a major charity gala hosted by a tech power couple in a $30 million mansion would not go unnoticed. Sure enough, about a week before the event, I received a call from a mutual friend, Sophia, who had remained close to both Amanda and me despite the awkward situation. "Josephine," she said hesitantly, "I am not sure if this is inappropriate, but Amanda asked if she and James could attend your charity gala. She said they would make a substantial donation to the cause." I took a deep breath, surprised by how calm I felt. 5 years ago, the mere thought of seeing them again would have sent me into a panic. Now I was curious more than anything else. "Tell them they are welcome to attend," I said. "It is for charity after all." Sophia sounded relieved. "I will let them know. And Josephine? They don't know about Michael, or your success. I never mentioned it." That was interesting. Despite my company's prominence, despite the features in business magazines, they were unaware of my new life. Perhaps they had been so caught up in their own drama that they hadn't bothered to follow my journey. The thought gave me a strange satisfaction. The night of the gala arrived. Our home was transformed with thousands of twinkling lights, exotic flower arrangements, and ice sculptures. A string quartet played in the grand foyer as guests arrived in their finest attire. Michael and I greeted each one personally, accepting their generous donations to our education fund. I wore a custom Valentino gown in deep emerald that cost more than my entire wedding to James had. Diamonds glittered at my ears and throat gifts from Michael, who delighted in spoiling me despite my protests that I could buy my own jewelry now. And then I saw them. James, Amanda, and Diane entering together, looking around with appreciative expressions that quickly froze when they spotted me. I watched as confusion, then shock, then something like dread crossed their faces. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't expected me, Josephine Parker, standing confidently in a mansion that made the Taylor estate look modest, greeting guests as the successful entrepreneur and philanthropist I had become. But it wasn't just the setting or my obvious success that shocked them. It was the man beside me. Michael Chen, known in business circles as the Tech Oracle, for his uncanny ability to spot and invest in winning companies before they exploded in value. Michael, whose net worth dwarfed the Taylor family fortune even in their best days. Michael, who looked at me with such obvious love and pride that it made a mockery of James's weak protestations of love years ago. I excused myself from the conversation I was having and walked toward them, Michael by my side. The look on Diane's face alone was worth every tear I had shed, every moment of despair I had endured. James, Amanda, Diane. I greeted them, my voice steady and warm as if they were any other guests. How lovely of you to come. Your donation is greatly appreciated. They murmured polite responses, still clearly thrown off balance. Amanda looked older than her years, stress lines evident around her mouth and eyes despite obvious cosmetic work. James had developed a paunch and his hair was thinning. Diane, still elegant but somehow diminished, clutched her champagne flute like a lifeline. "Allow me to introduce my husband, Michael Chen," I said, taking Michael's hand. "Michael, this is James Taylor, his wife Amanda, and his mother Diane." Michael, who knew my history with them, smiled politely and shook their hands. "Pleasure to meet you. I have heard so much about you all." The implication that I had discussed them with my new husband clearly unsettled them. What had I said? How did I portray them? The uncertainty in their eyes was delicious. "Congratulations on your success, Josephine," James said, trying to regain his composure. "Your company is doing quite well, I understand." "Very well," I confirmed. "And Taylor Investments. I have heard things are challenging in the current market." James's face tightened. "We are navigating some difficulties, but nothing we can't handle." "Actually," Michael interjected smoothly, "I believe my investment group recently acquired the building housing Taylor Investments. Small world, isn't it?" The color drained from James's face. He hadn't known. The management company had kept the identity of the new owners confidential during the transaction. "We are planning some renovations," Michael continued casually. "Nothing that should disrupt your operations too significantly, assuming things proceed as planned with your lease renewal." It was the perfect blend of business fact and subtle threat. Michael hadn't done it for revenge. He had made the acquisition because it was a sound business decision, but the timing of revealing it couldn't have been more perfect. "I am sure we can come to a mutually beneficial arrangement," James managed to say, though sweat had broken out on his forehead. "I am sure we can," Michael agreed easily. "Josephine has mentioned that despite your personal history, she bears no ill will toward your company or its employees." The implication was clear. I had influence over decisions that could affect James's business, his livelihood, his future. Diane, never one to stay silent for long, attempted to regain control of the conversation. "Josephine, dear, you look wonderful. Marriage clearly agrees with you this time." The barb was subtle but unmistakable, this time as opposed to my failed marriage to her son. "Thank you, Diane," I replied serenely. "When you find the right partner, someone who values and supports you for exactly who you are, it makes all the difference." Amanda winced visibly. I wondered briefly how her marriage to James was really going. The gossip I had heard suggested it was far from the fairy tale they had imagined when they betrayed me. "And children," Diane pressed. "Any plans to start a family?" Before I could respond, Michael placed his hand gently on my still flat stomach. "Actually, we are expecting. Due in October. We were planning to announce it later tonight." The news, which we had only confirmed the week before, was met with forced congratulations from the three people who had once been my family. I watched as Amanda's hand instinctively went to her own stomach, now flat again after giving birth to two children who, according to Sophia, had only temporarily held James's attention before he returned to his 60-hour work weeks and frequent business trips. "How wonderful," Diane said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Nothing completes a family like children." "We already feel complete," I corrected her gently. "The baby is a beautiful addition to our love, not a requirement for it." Before Diane could respond, we were interrupted by the governor of Colorado, who wanted to introduce Michael to some potential investors. We excused ourselves, leaving the Taylor family standing awkwardly by the champagne fountain. Throughout the evening, I caught James looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite identify. Regret, longing, envy. Whatever it was, it no longer had the power to affect me. He had made his choice years ago, and I had made mine. We were both living with the consequences. Later, as the party was winding down, James approached me alone while Michael was deep in conversation with the mayor. "Josephine," he said, his voice low and slightly slurred from too much expensive champagne, "can we talk privately?" I considered refusing, but curiosity won out. "Briefly, I agreed, leading him to a small sitting room off the main hall. Once the door closed behind us, James seemed to deflate the confident facade, crumbling. "You did it," he said, looking around at the opulent room, the clear evidence of my success. "You really did it." "Did what?" "Everything. The career, the perfect husband, the beautiful home. Everything my mother said you couldn't do, couldn't be." I studied him for a moment. "Is that why you came tonight, to see if the rumors were true? To see if I had managed to survive without you?" "No," he said quickly, then sighed. "Yes, maybe. I don't know." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Things aren't good, Joe. The business is failing. Amanda and I, we are not. It is not what we thought it would be." For a brief moment I remembered the young woman I had been, how desperately I had wanted him to realize his mistake, to come back to me. That version of me might have felt vindicated, even pleased at his admission of unhappiness. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "I am sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I took no joy in his suffering. "But that is something you and Amanda need to work through together." I know," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "That is not why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to ask, is there any chance?" My heart stopped. Surely he wasn't about to suggest, "Is there any chance you might have a position at your company? For me, Taylor Investments is on the verge of bankruptcy. I have a family to support." The audacity of it stunned me into momentary silence. After everything he had done, he was asking me for a job. When I found my voice, it was steady and clear. "As a matter of fact, we are expanding our financial division. We do have an entry-level position open. It would mean reporting to our financial manager, Aisha Williams. The pay is competitive for the level, though I imagine it's less than you are accustomed to." His face cycled through several emotions: relief, then confusion, then indignation, as he realized I was offering him a subordinate role, not an executive position. "Entry level. I have 15 years of investment experience. I run my own firm." "A firm that's facing bankruptcy," I reminded him gently. "And your experience is in traditional investment strategies that haven't adapted well to the digital economy. You would have a lot to learn about our sector." James opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again, reality sinking in. He needed this more than I needed him. Much more. "When can I start?" he asked, finally deflated. "Email your resume to our HR department. I will make sure they know to expect it. They will handle the process from there." I stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. "I won't be directly involved in your hiring or management, James. If you join Curated, you will be treated like any other employee. No special treatment, no special punishment." He nodded, understanding the terms. As I reached for the door handle, he spoke again, his voice barely audible. "I made a mistake, Joe. The biggest mistake of my life." I turned back to look at him one last time. "Yes," I agreed simply. "You did." Then I returned to the party, to my guests, to my husband, to my life. The life I had built from the ashes of betrayal. The life that was richer, more authentic, and more fulfilling than anything I could have had as James Taylor's wife. As the last guests departed our charity gala, Michael and I stood in the grand foyer of our home, his arm wrapped protectively around my waist. The event had raised over $2 million for educational programs, far exceeding our expectations. But the true victory of the night had nothing to do with money. "How are you feeling?" Michael asked, pressing a gentle kiss to my temple. That could not have been easy, seeing them again. I considered the question seriously. "Strangely peaceful," I replied. "Like the final chapter of an old book has been closed." We made our way to the back terrace overlooking the illuminated gardens. The night was clear, stars scattered across the Colorado sky, the air crisp with early spring coolness. Michael wrapped a cashmere throw around my shoulders as we settled onto a cushioned lounger. "James asked me for a job," I said, nestling against Michael's chest. "His family business is failing." Michael's eyebrows rose. "What did you tell him?" "That he could apply for an entry-level position in our financial division, that he would be treated like any other employee." Michael chuckled, the sound rumbling against my ear. "That was generous of you, more generous than I might have been in your position." "It wasn't about generosity," I explained, "or revenge. It just seemed like the right thing to do. His choices have consequences, but so do mine. I don't want to be the kind of person who uses power to punish others, even those who hurt me." Michael tightened his arms around me. "That is why I love you, Josephine Parker Chen. Your heart is as brilliant as your mind." Later that night, I found myself unable to sleep, my mind replaying the events of the evening. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Michael, and wandered to the nursery we had begun preparing for our child. The room was still mostly empty, just a crib and a rocking chair waiting for the baby furniture we had ordered. I sat in the rocking chair, hands resting on my stomach, thinking about the long, painful journey that had led me here. I thought about the devastated young woman I had been certain her life was over when her husband and sister betrayed her. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her that the end of what she thought was her whole world was actually the beginning of something far greater. The next morning, I had one final encounter with my past. Amanda had texted asking to meet for coffee before she and James returned to their home in the suburbs. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe not far from my house. Amanda was already there when I arrived, nervously shredding a napkin. She looked up when I approached, and I could see the toll the years had taken on her. She was still beautiful, but there was a brittleness to her beauty now, an edge of desperation. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. The awkward silence that followed was broken by the arrival of the server. I ordered a herbal tea, mindful of my pregnancy. Amanda ordered a double espresso, her hands shaking slightly. "Congratulations on the baby," she said after the server left. "You always wanted children." "Thank you," I replied, unsure where this conversation was heading. Amanda took a deep breath. "I want to apologize, Joe, not just for last night, but for everything, for betraying you, for stealing your husband, for letting Diane manipulate us all." I studied her face, looking for signs of insincerity, but found only genuine regret. "Why now, Amanda?" "It has been 5 years. Because seeing you last night so successful, so happy, it made me realize what I threw away. Not just my sister, but my integrity, my self-respect." She looked down at her wedding ring, twisting it anxiously. "James and I, we are not happy. We never have been. Not really. We were both so caught up in Diane's vision of the perfect Taylor couple that we didn't stop to think about what we were destroying." Tears filled her eyes. "Our marriage has been falling apart for years. James has had affairs. The business is failing. Diane lives with us now because she lost most of her money in bad investments." She laughed bitterly. "The perfect family she engineered is a complete disaster." I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication, sadness, and a strange sort of pity. "I am sorry things are difficult for you," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, Amanda was still my sister. "Don't be," she said, wiping her eyes. "I made my bed, as they say." She looked at me directly. "I don't expect forgiveness, Joe. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I recognize the magnitude of what I did to you, and I live with that regret every day." I took a sip of my tea, considering my response carefully. 5 years ago, I thought you and James and Diane had taken everything from me. My marriage, my future, my sense of self-worth. I was devastated in a way I didn't think I could recover from. Amanda nodded, tears flowing freely now. "But here is what I learned, Amanda. No one can take your future from you unless you let them. No one can define your worth but you." I set down my cup. "I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Holding on to anger and resentment would only keep me tied to the past, to the pain." She looked up, shocked. "Just like that? You forgive me?" "Forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was okay. It doesn't mean we will ever be close again. It just means I am letting go of the hurt, releasing its hold on me." Amanda nodded, slowly, understanding. "And James, his job application. If he is qualified, he will be considered like any other candidate. I meant what I said last night. I won't use my position to punish him, but I won't give him special treatment either." We finished our drinks in a more comfortable silence. As we prepared to leave, Amanda hesitated. "What about Diane? She asked me to see if you would meet with her too." I considered this, remembering the calculating, cruel woman who had orchestrated so much pain. Not now, I decided. Maybe someday, but I am not ready for that. Amanda nodded, understanding. As we stood to leave, she asked one final question. Are you truly happy, Joe? Really and truly? I thought of Michael, of our growing child, of the company I had built from nothing, of the strength I had discovered within myself. Yes, I said simply. I really am. The peaceful certainty in my voice seemed to hit Amanda harder than any angry words could have. She nodded once more, then turned and walked away, shoulders slightly hunched, carrying the burden of her choices. As I watched my sister leave, I felt the last pieces of my old life finally fall away. The circle was complete. The journey from betrayal to triumph, from devastation to healing, had reached its conclusion. My life now wasn't the one I had imagined when James proposed to me all those years ago. It was infinitely better, richer, more authentic. I had been broken, yes, but in rebuilding myself I had created something stronger than before. The greatest revenge, I realized, wasn't in seeing my betrayers suffer or even in flaunting my success before them. It was in the simple fact that their actions intended to destroy me had instead set me free. Free to discover my true strength, my true purpose, my true love. As I placed my hand on my growing belly, feeling the first fluttering movements of new life within me, I silently thanked them. Not for what they did, but for what their actions ultimately revealed: the unbreakable resilience of my spirit, the boundless capacity of my heart to heal and love again, and the undeniable truth that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted can lead you directly to what you truly need. I hope my story resonates with anyone going through betrayal or heartbreak right now. Remember that your lowest point can become the foundation for your greatest triumph. Have you ever experienced a devastating setback that ultimately led you to something better? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of heartbreak to healing touched you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that there is light after darkness. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, your worth is not determined by those who failed to see it.